everybody, what's up? Welcome back to The People's Brief. I am your host, Lynae Vanee. Real quick, y'all hungry? Well, you might want to go ahead and put in that order or reheat them leftovers because you definitely will be by the end of today's episode. Take a ride with me as we dive deep into the nitty-gritty of Black cuisine. But first, let me tell you how we got here. Now, as if the war on our books, our history, as if the right for us to take up space being under attack wasn't enough, it has now come to my attention that Black people in America have also been drafted into diaspora wars, once again. And what are diaspora wars, you ask? Super unproductive games of compare and contrast, or claims of whose cultural African heritage is more valid than the other. And get this, claims made by Black people about other Black people whose great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-grandmama and them slave ships just ended up in a different space. Goodness gracious, I say. But if there is one thing that evidences the presence, lineage, and longstanding influence of Black American culture, it is our food. The innovation, the ingenuity, the intimacy of it all. We call it soul food because it was designed to nourish the soul. Our food has been the centerpiece of our sustenance, our communal joy, our gathering. It brings us together and it brings us through. And it looks different from region to region. I personally don't put sugar in my grits, and don't you dare put a heap of spaghetti on my plate next to some fried fish. That is dastardly behavior, and some of y'all might need to be in jail. But much like many other sects descended from Mother Africa, our food is intimately tied to the stories of our forced migration to this continent and across this continent. Our survival as a marginalized group in predicaments where our food choices were either limited or ostracized. Did you know the proverbial they started racializing watermelon because it became a source of self-sufficiency for Black farmers? Once slavery ended, Black farmers and sharecroppers had begun to make a healthy profit off of the fruit. And soon after, you see it used in minstrelsy and illustrating all of those blackface cartoons because the fruit quickly became socialized as a symbol of poverty. And that's interesting to me because if you've ever bitten into a perfectly ripe one, then I know you've never tasted anything more rich. Hello? Anywho, our food functions as an expression of our creativity, our connection, and a vital part of every one of our celebrations. Family reunions, church potlucks, and the ever-coveted, highly anticipated, necessarily gate-kept cookouts, all sacred gatherings crucial to our cultural fabric, an aspect we will actually model for you here today. Now, last I checked, we are still living in the same unprecedented times as last week, with the same attacks on our Black spaces as we were last week. But the one thing we have never had to debate ownership of as a culture is our food. So today, we push back on the Black American slander in various ways. By taking a deeper dive into the history and cultural traditions of our food, we hope to, 1, put a pin in an extremely unproductive and uninformed conversation. 2, bust some myths about Black cultural food preferences and health disparities. And 3, shine a light on the opposite end of the spectrum where some of our communities don't have the opportunity to fully realize the potential of our cultural food traditions, or innovations for that matter, on a day-to-day. Joining us tonight, we have some special guests that will help us uncover what lies beneath the surface of soul food. For centuries, African Americans have worked the land. From the enslaved Africans who brought their own agricultural traditions to the Americas, to the freed men and women who sharecropped and tenant farmed their way to independence, the legacy of farming and agriculture is woven into the very fabric of African American culture. It's a story of resilience, hard work, and community. The Atlanta harvest is carrying on that tradition, cultivating fresh produce and preserving the stories of those who came before. Let's take a look at how this tradition has shaped the flavors we know and love.
When they come and shop here, there's almost a feeling of relief to be able to see people that look like them and that eat like them and that have their best interests at heart. What we really promote here is creating a community where people look at us as their own personal farmers, people that they can feel comfortable bringing their family to. My name is EliYahu Ben Asa, and I'm the owner of Atlanta Harvest. I'm a first-generation farmer. Me and my family, we own 3 farms here in Georgia where we've been growing organically grown food since 2010. We're very focused on promoting local food, locally grown, organically grown, chemical-free food that customers can trust. So we do a lot of education. We sell plants, we sell seedlings, trees, soil. because we want to enable our local community to have the tools to grow their own food and become more self-sustainable like we've become. For every person that comes here to Atlanta Harvest, I try to enable them with some of the mental tools that they would need to really understand what the landscape looks like in agriculture. Although less than 1% of farmers in America are Black, I think what we really need is community. We've seen the power of the Black mind and the Black collective, and the same can be done in agriculture. Although the work is hard and laborious, when we have social ecosystems where we can rely on one another for whether it be different crops or sales outlets, we can truly come together to create something sustainable, something that we can rely on for not only the food that feeds our families, but the money that comes in our community. The mission and vision of Atlanta Harvest came from my father. As a son, my job is to help my father fulfill his vision, fulfill his goals. And one of his goals was for our family to be an agricultural stronghold in the community. What we've been able to do as a family is to take many different aspects of agriculture and a focus of really what the people want and what they need. So we've done growing fruits and vegetables, raising livestock, plants, and education, really some of our core values or the core things that we do and what we present to the community. And what this does is it gives people a well-rounded idea not only of what's available and what can be done as a family, as a small family that is pretty young in the agriculture world, but also in some of the opportunities that they can take on for themselves. As Atlanta Harvest as a business, one of our missions and goal statements is to combat food insecurity in the Metro Atlanta area. And one of the ways that we do that is with our farm stand here. Not only is it available for people to come here, see the farm, get their hands a little dirty, and purchase food at the farm stand, but we also deliver to all areas of the Metro Atlanta region. And this enables us to not only combat the food insecure areas and food desert areas here in Clayton County, but in all the 5 counties of Metro Atlanta area. And I hope that our work can inspire people to grow food in their own environments, in their own communities, and enable each other to create a small ecosystem where they grow food and feed each other in the ways that we've been able to feed our community.
Thank you to the Atlanta Harvest team for sharing your story with us. We'll be right back after this break, where we will be celebrating the food that has helped shape our culture. Welcome back to the People's Brief, everybody. Now, we've had a whole history lesson on Black food, and I want to bring you to the right here and now of it all. So, here to break bread with me are 2 of my close personal friends, Chef Deborah VanTrece and farmer and owner of Atlanta Harvest, EliYahu Ben Asa. How are you guys doing tonight?
Wonderful.
Thank you. Thank you so much for coming to dinner with me. Now, Chef Deborah.
Yes.
You are very well known in the Southern cuisine landscape. You are also the owner of Twisted Soul Cookhouse and Pours and Aretha's at the Point in Atlanta. Now, guys, if you've never been to either one of these restaurants, I'm gonna tell you right now, she throw down. She throw down so bad they have given her a Michelin recommendation, and it's because when she does throw down, she elevates our cuisine. We've already seen the work EliYahu is doing, rebuilding the idea of what it means to be really invested in what you eat from farm to table as Black people in this country. But what I'd love to do with both of you guys is get into your own food lineage. As Black people in this country, we come from different places, and that influences our perspective on food in different ways. So can we do that?
Sounds like a
do it.
plan.
Cool,
Yes.
lovely. First things first, what are we eating tonight?
We are eating a lot.
Okay.
So let's see, where should we start? Let's start with the bread.
Okay.
So we have a whole cake, also a sweet potato biscuit. You know, we'll talk a little bit more about why and all of that. A confit chicken leg with a Vidalia onion gravy.
Okay.
A nice green salad, but it has crispy black-eyed peas, cornbread croutons, candied baby carrots, just with a little bit of brown sugar glaze on them. We've got some pan-seared red snapper with a nice crawfish butter sauce. And then we have a ricciotti pasta with collard greens. It's kind of a play on mac and cheese and Alfredo, but you know, instead of having them separate, we mixed them all up in one.
Played that well.
Exactly, right? Strawberries are in season now, so it's time for us to do our strawberry moonshine pound cake.
Okay.
So it's got moonshine, it's got basil, strawberries. And then we have a fried chicken salad, wonton, green tomato chimichurri, and a barbecue mushroom and banana.
Okay.
Wow.
I don't know where to begin. I think I'm going to start with the biscuits, though.
Okay.
Can I interest anybody else in a biscuit?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
And to go with the biscuit, you've
Thank
got
you.
a sorghum molasses butter,
Okay.
and also a pork belly bacon jam. Now, if that sounds good to you.
That sounds delicioso. Now, can you also talk to us about the choices you made to set this table today? I know that was important to you.
Yeah, it was important to me. Traditionally, we're proud people. African Americans, we've always been proud people, even through our hardships and strife. So, I can remember my grandmother, setting the table, and the china might have been chipped or whatever, but those were the good plates. And on special occasions, they brought out the good plates, but they were always very intentional on making sure that the visual of the table looked as good as they could possibly make it. So I wanted to make sure our visual looked good. I wanted and I always do this, but I wanted a little bit of a modern Afrocentric theme going.
That's what I was going to say, because
yeah.
usually the good plates are of European or
Yeah.
Asian culture and not
Yes.
reflective of the people sitting around it,
Exactly.
sitting around the table.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I think, historically too, we've gotten somewhat away from that, and understanding that that you eat first with your eyes.
Yeah.
So we want our food to look pretty, and we deserve our food to look pretty.
Absolutely.
And it doesn't have to be on just Thanksgiving and Christmas.
I know that's right.
Amen.
I know that's right. Okay, so I guess to ground us, I want to ask, I'm from the South. I say I'm from the South because I had military parents and moved around quite a bit, but my roots are in Mississippi, North Carolina, and Georgia. And that means I have a very specific food tradition when it comes to my Thanksgiving plate, what I eat at a cookout here and there. I wonder, one, if you could tell us where you guys are from, and then your favorite food memory. And that could
wanna
be
go
an
first?
event.
Now I'll let you take
Okay.
this
That
one
could
first.
be an
Yeah.
event, or it could
Yeah.
be something that is just so
Yeah.
nostalgic to you that you can eat it anytime, any place.
Yes. I grew up as an only child, and being around people usually for me meant that there was good food being served and we were celebrating something. So I am in love with celebrations. My favorite one is Thanksgiving to this day.
Okay.
It was, the table full of food, table full of people, and I'd watch my mom or my grandmother cook for days, and I'd be right there in the kitchen with them. So even now, that is a big deal for me. I will invite strangers off the street. You don't have anywhere to go, come to our house. And that I'm so serious about that. I want to cook everything. I don't want you to have to bring anything. It's just like the biggest day for me.
Okay.
And that tradition is something that I keep going, and I know my daughter's going to keep it going also.
Now, do you do Thanksgiving here or back home?
I do Thanksgiving here.
I'll be waiting on my invitation. Okay. And what about you?
I'm originally from New York City. Grew up in the Bronx and in Queens and a little bit in Manhattan for a while. So I actually moved to Atlanta in 2018, but we've been here since 2010 doing the farming. So really, I'm a New Yorker.
Okay.
I don't think I've been here long enough to claim peach yet. So,
Okay.
So reserve that for me.
How long have you been here?
Like long term since 2018.
Okay.
So not very long, but since 2010, I've just been going back and forth whenever I had like school breaks and stuff like that, because I wanted to finish my schooling while I was up in New York. So,
Okay.
So I've had enough time, but you still can't ask me where anything is here. I don't leave the farm very often, and everybody that knows me knows that. But my parents are Caribbean. My mother is from Trinidad and Tobago. My father's side, they're from Puerto Rico. And so I've had a lot of Caribbean, like my whole culinary influence is Caribbean. I don't know if they're, we were kind of talking about northern food or you know what people kind of eat in New York, but you know, I couldn't tell you what northern food would be because generally in the places that I was growing up, most of the people around there were Caribbean.
Okay.
So, you know, one of the foods that I have, I mean, it's has such a place in my heart, but most people don't know what it's called, doubles. And so, are you familiar? Okay, there you go.
Okay.
All right, there we go.
I'm lost.
I'm feeling comfortable now.
Okay.
So doubles is a Trinidadian street food.
Okay.
Made with 2 pieces of dough, kind of flat dough, kind of flat, fluffy dough, which they call bara.
Okay.
And inside it is like a wet chickpea
Okay.
stew, kind of.
Ooh.
And it's basically a sandwich. And then you just, it's finger food. I mean, you just kind of scoop it up and eat it. And it's great when you're getting it like hot and fresh because you eat it right there. And a lot of people would just sit in front of the doubles truck and just eat and order more and eat.
Wow.
And you would kind of, that would be your thing. So
I'm pretty sure I'd love it. I love Caribbean food. I love different cultures of different countries in Africa, their cuisine as well. And I have a running joke with my friends that I want to be spicy black so bad because, you know, a lot of times it feels like their culture is so identifiable because it's different.
Yes.
And sometimes we take for granted the things that make our culture significant and stand out. And I feel like wherever you're from, I think one thing we can agree on is calling our food soul food.
Yes.
But I do wonder what that means for you, because as we were talking about the importance of a segment like this, I couldn't really put words to identify what these moments mean, because they are things that are so like routine for me. I value and cherish them, but if you could put a definition on soul food, what would it be? And also, I can't be the only one with food on my plate.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Sorry. Yes. Okay.
Think on it as you grab.
So for me, that's soul food is a big term, and I think there's different definitions of it. I think, I know historically, it was a name that we gave to our food really during the civil rights movement, because we were looking to uplift ourselves. Our food had, prior to that, really been kind of dogged. You know, it's the cast off, it's the throwaway. It was nothing.
Yeah.
It had no respect. And I think when we decided, to take back, a lot of our traditions and be proud of them, that's kind of when the term soul food came out. It really, to a lot of people, I think it became particular dishes, particular types of food. We looked at, neck bones, chitlins, greens. But we're not the only ones in this world that eat neck bones, chitlins, and greens.
Yeah.
So I think, claiming that as soul food, it's more than that. It's not just those particular ingredients.
items.
It's the fact that out of strife, out of nothing, we still came up with these creative ways to take those cast-offs and make amazing, nourishing food for the people we cared about and celebrate that. And that, to me, is what African American soul food is about. It is about those memories that we've made with these foods. It is about the stories that are around the food, not necessarily the ingredient itself.
the comfort too.
Yes.
Because when I think about
Yes.
soul food, I think about comfort food, right? Would you say like that'd be the other
Yes.
term?
I'm
Yes.
getting real comfortable
And
right now.
And that sense of comfort, people would describe, like when I eat, when I taste these flavors, I'm reminded of
Those
the people.
memories, yes.
Yeah, I'm reminded of my grandmother. I'm
Yes.
reminded of my mother or my uncle who, grill or whatever. And these memories, they fill you with comfort, but they also fill you with life. And you can think even literally, the soul the soul of food, the souls of the people that have taken part of these recipes, of these traditions. They're with you when you consume, when you eat, because you think of it. It comes out of you when you pass it along to your children. So.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think you guys bring up such an amazing point, because it is the ceremony around our food that replenishes the soul.
Exactly.
And and that's such a necessary part of our survival. And coming together, it's a respite for us, and has been. I get overwhelmed sometimes thinking about the everyday of our ancestors. We think about them as enigmas or as plot points in history, or just people who experience these grand movements, but what about their day-to-day, and what small joys, what agency were we able to use? And much of it was surrounding food.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
surrounding
Yes.
family.
Yeah.
I've never had a hoe cake. I don't know if I'm, if my black card is in question at this time. But from looking at it, what I do see is that it just looks reminiscent of so many different types of cakes, like Johnny cakes or even pancakes or whatever. And so can you speak to, I guess, how regionally we might have the same practices or habits that result in different?
A lot, and that's through not just, black culture, but that's through a lot of cultures. So you'll see similarities in food, and maybe it's just prepared a little bit different, or the spices are a little bit different.
Yeah.
So hoe cake, Johnny cake, pancake, cornbread. The significance of the actual term hoe cake, rumor has it, and historians say that it came from them pouring batter on a hoe and putting it on a flame to cook it. And that was,
Here we go.
ingenious. That was why it has the name hoe cake.
Yeah.
And I think you bring up a good point that more often than not, food comes from necessity, and however our environment is structured and set up. And a lot of times our food is punched down on, our preferences, it's seen as unhealthy or ghetto. But I think we just spoke to the value, how we revere our food. But if you had any sort of if you had to myth bust someone who was saying that black food just isn't healthy for you, what would you say in response to that?
I'm going to give them a whole lecture, but
First of all,
I would give them a whole lecture. There's a woman I follow, the black nutritionist, a doctor, and I just have joy in my heart every time I see a video or something with her explaining the plate and the idea that our food, and we unfortunately. We have some of the ideas ourselves about our food, and that hurts my heart. If I'm honest, when I first started my journey, my culinary journey, in school, they didn't even teach the class. It was regional cuisine. They got to soul food, and the instructor looked at me and said, "You want to tell them about soul food?" But more than that, once I graduated and got out into the world, and I made the decision, I'm doing what I'm used to doing, soul food, but I'm gonna do it a little bit differently. But I worked with a lot of chefs who looked like me that were real quick to tell me that's not what they do, and say it with such disdain. And that too was something that I thought, okay, I'm about to set out and show you differently. This is what I do, and I'm proud of what I do, and I'm proud of that food because it's good. It's good. I'm like, what my mama was cooking was delicious. I don't know why you would be ashamed of that.
And I think, to your point about internalizing those criticisms, it has a lot to do with ignorance about how certain habits became habits in the first place.
Yes.
Because when we talk about unhealthy eating habits, it has so much more to do with socioeconomic factors. So I was going to ask you to weigh in as someone who is literally paying attention to what goes onto their plate from farm to table, how we can even shift those narratives intentionally.
This conversation can get so deep, when we're starting to talk about unhealthy habits, it's not black culture to eat 3 meals a day. That's not, it's not really even necessary to eat 3 meals a day. But capitalism has taught us that You should have breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and breakfast should be your most important meal. And you should have your Wheaties with your sugar and your milk and all these things that further along the American capitalistic goal of selling all these commodities. So, you know, people that look at soul food and are seeing some of the ingredients and have prejudice towards them, they're not understanding that choices are made based off of resources, right? We kind of talked about this when we were at the farm that, you know, many recipes may have been brought over, converted, you know, what they could remember from what they had access to. But the ingredients were not there. And they were, like you said, they were only given scraps. So they had to use what was available to make the food that they made. Now, a lot of those things have stayed because humans are creatures of habit, but that does not necessarily mean that that's the end all be all. You know, and so these recipes that may call for items that may not be as healthy, you know, are not, you know, you're not locked to it. You know, and it's you know, it's heartbreaking also because people, especially Black people, a lot of us unfortunately don't always know where we come from. And that's a real big disconnect into this idea of pride, because how can you have pride for something that you have no knowledge of?
That's so true.
And that's why, and I think, you know, if I could speak just from observation, I think that's why a lot of people who get into this culinary field are going after these other nations, these other cultures, ways of food, because they see them as superior because they have no comfort in their own.
And we've been conditioned to believe we shouldn't have pride over our things. Quite literally looking into some history as we were researching for this episode, came up on the, how would I say this? The devaluation of the watermelon. And how and how watermelon, during the era of sharecroppers began to farm watermelons, grow watermelons for their own self-sustenance. And when they started making money, all of a sudden watermelons become socialized as this poor, dirty, cheap thing. And now it's Black people. Now it's Black people love watermelons and they're lazy. Like completely ludicrous things, but things that have stayed with us over the course of time that we once again internalize and then begin to get on the bandwagon of devaluing and then trying to create this narrative that Black people can do more, or we are better than this and we should look at all of our options. And it's not to say that we can't walk and chew gum at the same time, but there's nothing wrong with the food that belongs to us.
No, not at all. I mean, people don't even really know what's available in the seasons. For you to be criticizing somebody eating a watermelon that is sometimes the most abundant fruit, the healthiest fruit to get during the summertime is ludicrous. You know?
But I do think economics is that huge factor there, because, you know, I see that especially in our neighborhoods. You know, you have $5 and you've got this many members of the family, and there's that chicken over there that's huge, okay? And the government at a point wanted to grow things faster, cheaper, faster, cheaper. We don't seem to take the time to educate ourselves sometime and understand that's what's happened. And so all of those hormones and all of those things that made that chicken go bigger, faster, are the things that also we forget, because all we know is that's a big chicken and I can get it for this amount of money and I can feed this many people. And then that leads to, now my blood pressure is high. Now I'm a diabetic. Now I have kidney disease. You know, I mean, I can keep going because I want to know why in our neighborhoods there's so many dialysis clinics. And you go to, you go to other neighborhoods. It's like, where's the dialysis clinic? There's some time I'm driving in our neighborhoods and every other block, that's what I'm seeing. You know, but in our stores, you know, in underserved areas, you know, you're basically serving us food or selling food that will sometimes kill us.
The priority is totally different.
We don't know any better.
And in addition to our lack of access, there is just sometimes a lack of even capacity to be aware of certain things. And so I don't want to villainize or criticize anyone for ignorance, because sometimes that ignorance is also an intentional result of systemic injustice.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's a big issue. It's a big thing.
Absolutely.
It's a big thing.
I do want to go ahead.
Oh, well, it makes the work that we're doing so important.
Yes.
You know, tackling food insecurities in the Metro Atlanta area is a mission statement of Atlanta Harvest. And so, I mean, but what does that mean, right? I mean, we've kind of touched on some ideas around, you know, what we have access to, what we have the money to afford, how many people we need to feed. And when you're thinking about that, you would think like, okay, well, I mean, if it's available, if that's all I have, then that's fine.
Yeah.
But there are people out there that are not only providing better food sources, healthier food sources, for people to have access to in their communities, but also giving them the tools and education to do, you know, what it takes to make those things happen for themselves. And I don't think that it's a lack of ambition or a lack of motivation for people to want to be healthier, but it's, you know, this is America, and this is the kind of environment that America has made for our people.
Yes.
But we want to encourage people to continue to keep pushing for what they deserve.
Yes.
Yeah.
One of the programs that we champion at Atlanta Harvest is our 2-for-1 EBT.
Okay.
So for people who have food stamps, they can get half off, 50% on fresh fruits and vegetables, and that's with Wholesome Wave Georgia. I'm sure you're familiar with.
Yes.
And so that's a way for us to get the people in the door who are still having that kind of focus and showing them that there are better options.
Yeah.
You know, nutrient-dense food. Because just because you're eating doesn't necessarily mean that you're giving the body what it needs. You know?
Exactly.
So nutrient-dense food, what that really means is like if you harvested this carrot, you're eating it within the week.
Yeah.
You know, preferably the first couple days, but you know, I know how it is. But you're eating it within the week and giving your body the chance to catch up on what it needs. Because when you eat, even if you have a big chicken and you spread it around, or you have lots of vegetables, and everybody has a chance to eat, if you're not feeding the body the vitamins and minerals, then in a few hours you'll still be hungry. And then we wonder why there's childhood obesity. So continuing eating.
Well, thank you both so much for this conversation. You have brought so much more to the top of mind when I think about food, because as I said earlier, some things we just take for granted. We don't really get into the intricacies of how food makes us feel good, and just some of the things we still struggle with food today. So thank you for the work that both of you all are doing. You educating people, creating opportunities, and making healthier foods more accessible. You for showing these folks we can indeed throw down and elevate at the same time with pride in our foodstuffs. And I want to say thank you to you all for coming to our dinner party as well. I'd offer you a plate, but I'm not gonna, because I told you to get some food at the top of this episode, didn't I? But please stay right there. We'll be back with more from the People's Brief. For Black people, our cultural je ne sais quoi is reflected in our culinary landscape. Foods that were intended to be scraps, deemed unsuitable for even animals, made into the most finger-licking good recipes to stand the test of time by our ancestors. Food reserved and retained originally as acts of resistance against our enslavement, making their way into the very core of American foodways. But that's just Black people for you. Cultural impact by way of surviving. Making damn good food, having a damn good time doing it, despite outside forces making it known they didn't want us doing either. And it's hard not to lament on just how far we haven't come in that regard. Black folks have taken our traditional foods to some of the highest heights, but a whole heap of us still struggle to gain access to enough food to sustain ourselves healthily. In 2023, 22% of Black people in the United States experience food insecurity, more than twice the rate of white people. Why, you ask? The usual suspects. Economic inequality resulting in less money we have to spend on food. The healthier, the more expensive, of course. Redlining resulting in food deserts conveniently located in Black neighborhoods and grocers who will not build in them. But just like our ancestors, we are looking to food as resistance. Things like mutual aid fridges and community gardens are paving the way to freedom. Organizations like Feeding America granting over $100 million to food banks and community organizations led by or serving Black communities, especially in the rural South. And then there's plantation after plantation being reclaimed by the descendants of the enslaved that worked them, this time working the land to nourish us on our own terms. For us, food is life, food is community, food is freedom, and it's no wonder we don't play about it. So never miss a beat on the People's Brief. I'll be back next week with more time.